Tonight, you're going to turn a dial on a stove, and heat is going to fill a pan, and you won't think about it for even a second. It's just dinner. A smell will drift through your kitchen. Your mouth will water before the food even touches a plate. But for most of human history, that smell didn't exist. For nearly 2 million years, your ancestors ate their food exactly the way every other animal on Earth still does. Raw, cold, tough, ripped apart with bare hands and blunt teeth. And then, at some point, something changed. Every single one of your ancestors after that point never went back. Not once. In 2 million years of trial and error, no human society on record has ever chosen to uninvent fire. So here's the question nobody asks at dinner. What was so powerful about a burning log that it rewired the human body itself? Not just human behavior. The body. Your jaw is smaller because of it. Your gut is shorter because of it. And there's a reason your brain right now is using 20% of your daily energy just to keep itself running. That number should not be possible for an animal your size. Something paid for it. You're about to find out what. Picture a chimpanzee eating lunch. It spends nearly 6 hours a day just chewing. Raw fruit, raw leaves, raw bark. All of it tough. All of it packed with cellulose the body can barely break down. Now picture yourself. You spend on average less than an hour a day chewing anything at all. Somewhere between that chimpanzee and you, an entire category of physical labor simply vanished from the human day. Richard Wrangham, a primatologist at Harvard, spent decades studying exactly this gap. His argument laid out in his book Catching Fire is blunt. Cooking is not something humans do. Cooking is something that made humans, humans. Heat breaks down tough plant fibers and denatures proteins before they ever reach your mouth. Your body was outsourcing digestion to the fire. And once digestion moved outside the body itself started to change. Here's where it gets strange. A study led by researcher Chris Organ, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, tracked the relationship between cooking, tooth size, and jaw strength across the human fossil record. The pattern was consistent. Every time cooked, softened food entered a hominin population's diet, jaw muscles shrank within a few 100,000 years. Raw food demands a heavy jaw, thick enamel, powerful chewing muscles anchored to a jutting bony ridge along the skull. Cooked food demands almost none of that. Your comparatively delicate, small-jawed face is not an accident of evolution. It's a receipt. Proof of a transaction that happened around a fire hundreds of thousands of years ago. Think about what that smaller jaw actually cost. A heavy, muscular jaw doesn't just help you chew. It anchors itself to a thick ridge of bone running across the top of the skull, and that ridge takes up space. Space that, in a raw food-eating hominin, simply isn't available for anything else. Shrink the jaw, shrink the ridge, and suddenly there's room. Room the brain case can expand into. The skull wasn't redesigned to make space for a bigger brain out of nowhere. Fire quietly cleared the construction site first, but teeth were the cheap part of the trade. The expensive part happened somewhere you can't see. Your gut, right now, is unusually small for a primate your size. Chimpanzees have long, wide intestines built to slowly ferment raw plant matter over hours. Human intestines are roughly 60% shorter relative to body size. That tissue is expensive to grow and expensive to maintain, so evolution doesn't shrink an organ for no reason. It shrinks an organ when the organ's job gets outsourced. Anthropologists Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler called this the expensive tissue hypothesis. Their idea: the body operates on a metabolic budget. Grow one energy-hungry organ, and something else has to shrink to pay for it. Cooking pre-digested food outside the body, which meant the gut no longer needed to do as much heavy lifting inside it. The gut shrank, and the energy that used to go toward digesting raw, tough plant matter got freed up. Freed up for something else entirely. That something else was sitting right above the shrinking gut, and it was hungry. The human brain burns through roughly 20% of the body's total daily energy, despite making up only about 2% of body weight. No other primate comes close to that ratio. Building and running a brain that expensive requires a massive, steady calorie surplus, the kind raw food simply cannot reliably deliver. Harvard researcher Rachel Carmody ran a set of controlled feeding experiments comparing mice-fed raw versus cooked meat and raw versus cooked sweet potato. Every single time, the cooked food group extracted significantly more usable calories from identical amounts of food and gained more body mass, even though they ate the exact same weight of the exact same ingredients. Cooking wasn't adding calories to the food, it was unlocking calories that were already there, trapped behind cell walls and tough proteins raw digestion couldn't fully break down. Multiply that calorie unlock across a population, across generations, across hundreds of thousands of years, and you get a species with enough spare metabolic budget to grow the most energy-expensive organ in the animal kingdom. Smaller gut, smaller jaw, bigger brain. All three numbers move together, and cooking sits at the center of the trade, quietly rerouting energy from chewing and digesting toward thinking. There's also a threat that heat quietly erased, one your ancestors never had to consciously think about but paid for constantly in raw form. Picture bacteria, parasites, and pathogens as a small, relentless villain, riding along on every raw bite of meat or wilted plant. Every raw meal was a gamble against infection, parasitic worms, food poisoning, weeks of illness that could kill an already calorie-strapped body. Heat doesn't negotiate with that villain, it simply ends it. Temperatures well below boiling are enough to destroy the overwhelming majority of dangerous bacteria and parasites living in raw meat. Every fire-cooked meal wasn't just easier to digest, it was a meal with the villain already defeated before the first bite. That matters more than it sounds like, because a body constantly fighting infection is a body constantly diverting energy toward its immune system, instead of toward growth, reproduction, or again, that expensive brain. Fewer infections meant more spare calories. More spare calories meant more room for the trade Aiello and Wheeler described. Every part of this story keeps pointing back to the same currency. Energy, where it went, what stopped stealing it. There's a colder side to this story too, one that has nothing to do with calories and everything to do with darkness. Before fire, night was simply the hours when nothing could be done. No hunting, no gathering, limited protection from predators that see far better in the dark than any human ever could. A fire changed the length of the usable day. It pushed back predators, it created warmth that let bodies stop burning fuel just to survive the cold. And it created something else, something almost accidental, a circle of light where people had to sit still, facing each other for hours with nothing to do but talk. Some researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer groups, including the Yukshihuansi of the Kalahari, have found that fire-lit evening conversation looks strikingly different from daytime talk. Daytime conversation, recorded and analyzed by anthropologists, skews heavily toward practical matters, complaints, logistics. Fire-lit conversation skews toward stories, myths, social bonding, the kind of talk that builds shared culture across a group. The fire didn't just cook the food, it appears to have created the very conditions for storytelling itself. The first stage that ever existed. Think about what that actually means for a species. Daytime is when information about the physical world gets exchanged. Where the water is. Which plants are safe. Who saw a predator near the river? But nighttime, sitting still around a shared flame with nothing else demanding your hands or your attention, is when a group has the spare bandwidth to trade something bigger. Shared identity. Who we are, what we believe, what happened to our ancestors before we were born. None of that requires a fire to be spoken, but it may have required a fire to be spoken often enough, consistently enough, night after night, for it to calcify into culture that outlived any single storyteller. So the body changed. The brain grew. The social world reorganized itself around a burning circle of light. But none of that answers the harder question, the one anthropologists still argue about at conferences today. When exactly did this start? The evidence is frustratingly incomplete. Charred bone fragments and heat-cracked stones at a South African site called Wonderwork Cave suggest controlled fire use as far back as 1 million years ago. Some researchers argue for evidence even older than that, though it remains contested. What almost everyone agrees on is this: cooking wasn't a single invention on a single day. It was a slow, patchy, repeatedly lost and rediscovered behavior that took hundreds of thousands of years to become permanent, universal, and irreversible. Some anthropologists point to an even harder problem hiding underneath the dating debate. Fire has to be started, but it also has to be kept. A cold snap, a flood, a long migration across open ground with no dry fuel, any of these could snuff out a group's only flame. Without the ability to reliably reignite it from scratch, an entire population could lose fire for a generation, quietly sliding back toward raw food, a heavier jaw, a longer gut, until, by chance or persistence, someone rediscovered the trick again. And that's the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. This wasn't a lucky accident stumbled into once and locked in forever. Entire populations likely discovered fire, lost it, went dark for generations, and had to rediscover it again. The version of humanity that exists today, the one with the small jaw and the short gut and the impossibly expensive brain, is the version that happened to be descended from the groups who kept the fire alive. Every time you turn on a stove, you're not performing some optional modern convenience. You're continuing the one habit your entire lineage could never afford to lose. Because here's what nobody tells you about raw food. It isn't dangerous the way people assume. It's simply insufficient. A raw food human chewing for 6 hours a day the way a chimpanzee does could survive. What that human almost certainly could not do is grow the brain currently reading these words. The fire didn't just make food easier to eat, it bought with stolen calories and shrunken organs, the very organ doing the wondering. You didn't choose to be born with a brain this expensive to run. Someone, hundreds of thousands of years ago, sat down next to a fire and made that choice for you.